They boxed up my desk while the loading crew watched. January 2nd, 6:47 in the morning. Ice crusted the pavement outside Harding Industrial Supply, and diesel exhaust hung thick in the cold air. I'd been drinking coffee in my basement office when Tyler came down with the HR rep and, security guard I didn't recognize. "We're terminating you effective immediately," he said. Didn't look at me. Read it off his phone like he was checking the weather. 28 years, 6 in the Navy before that. Reduced to a cardboard box and a severance envelope. The loading dock crew, 4 men I'd hired myself, stood frozen by the forklifts. Frank, the foreman, looked at his boots. The younger ones had their phones out, probably filming. Tyler handed me the envelope. His hands shook slightly, but his voice stayed level. "Your methods are obsolete. We're going digital." The security guard waited while I packed. Stapler. Coffee mug. Photo of my father, from the ribbon cutting in '78. I drove past the barn on my way out. 12 miles of county road, sleet starting to fall. The ground would be frozen solid by now, had been since Christmas. 6 inches down, maybe 8. The safe was under the floorboards, in the workshop, exactly where I'd left it. Tyler had no idea what was buried there. And he wouldn't. Not until spring. The truck's heater rattled as I turned onto Route 47. My breath fogged the windshield until the defroster caught up. The severance envelope sat on the passenger seat, unopened. I knew what was in it. 3 months' pay, standard separation agreement. Probably a non-compete clause Tyler's lawyer thought was enforceable. Wasn't. The road curved past the old cement plant, closed since the '90s. Snow had drifted against the abandoned silos. I'd driven this route 10,000 times, from the farm to the warehouse and back. My father had driven it before me. When Harding Industrial was still operating out of a Quonset hut, and James Sr. Was taking orders on a rotary phone. 78, that's when we incorporated. James brought the capital and the vision. I brought the operations knowledge and a willingness to work 18-hour days. We shook hands on the loading dock of our first real building, the same loading dock where his nephew had just fired me. The farmhouse came into view, 40 acres, most of it leased out to Wade Kimball for corn. The barn sat back from the road. Red paint faded to rust in places. My workshop took up the north end. I parked and sat there with the engine running, watching sleet tick against the windshield. The ground was frozen. I knew that before I even tried, but I had to see it for myself. I pulled on my work gloves and grabbed the shovel from the truck bed. The barn door resisted, ice in the track, then scraped open. The smell hit me first. Motor oil, old hay, WD-40. 50 years of accumulated work. My father's workbench still stood against the east wall, scarred wood and rusted vices. I'd built my own beside it when I was 16. The floor safe was under the newer bench. You had to move the tool chest first, then pry up 3 floorboards. I'd installed it in '81, right after the first shareholder agreement. The original documents were in there, every equity transfer, every stock certificate. 40 years of paperwork that proved I wasn't just an employee. I was a founder, a majority owner. 68%. I moved the tool chest, lifted the first board, the second. The third came up with a creak that echoed in the cold space. Then I hit frozen earth. The safe's top was visible, green-painted steel, combination lock, but the ground around it had frozen solid. I took the shovel and drove it down. The blade rang against frozen dirt like hitting concrete. Didn't even chip it. I tried again, same result. The sound echoed off the barn walls, startling a barn swallow from the rafters. 8 inches of frozen January earth. Might as well have been 8 feet of steel. I stood there breathing hard, watching my breath cloud in the dim light. The safe was right there. The proof was right there. Tyler's merger scheme, whatever it was, couldn't proceed without my signature. The '78 incorporation papers would prove I was a founding partner, not some employee he could dismiss with a severance check. But I couldn't reach them. Not until the ground thawed. I put the boards back, slid the tool chest into place. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Text from Donna Keys, the company accountant. 22 years she had been there. Honest as sunrise. The message was short. Yacht club tonight. Tyler's table. Be there. I stood in the barn doorway looking out at the farm. Sleet had turned to snow. The fields stretched white toward the tree line. My father had bought this land in '53, worked it until the day he died. He'd wanted me to keep it, build something on it, something that would last. Harding Industrial was supposed to be that something. I thought about calling Marcus Webb, my old fishing buddy, retired CFO. He'd know what to do. But Marcus was 71 and dealing with his own health problems. Couldn't drag him into this, not yet. The snow was coming down harder now. I locked the barn and went into the house. The kitchen was cold. I'd turned the heat down to 60 when I left this morning. Hadn't expected to be home before dark. I made fresh coffee and sat at the table. The severance envelope stared at me. I opened it. 3 months' salary, non-disclosure agreement, non-compete clause covering a 50-mile radius for 2 years, and a single-page termination letter on Harding Industrial letterhead, signed by Tyler Harding, Chief Executive Officer. The title still looked wrong. James Sr. had held that title for 42 years. Then the stroke put him in Pinecrest Assisted Living, and the board, over my objection, had appointed Tyler as interim CEO. That was November. 6 weeks ago, apparently interim had become permanent. I looked out the window at the barn. The safe was under there. The proof, the protection. Everything I'd spent 40 years building and documenting and preserving, locked under frozen ground I couldn't touch. My phone buzzed again. Donna, 7 p.m., corner booth. He won't see you. I set the phone down and drank my coffee. It was bitter. I'd left it brewing too long. Outside, the snow kept falling. The barn disappeared into white. And somewhere in town, Tyler was probably celebrating his first executive decision. He had 90 days before the ground thawed. That's how long I had to figure out how to stop him, without the one thing that could prove I had the right. The yacht club parking lot was half empty. Tuesday night, in January, only the serious drinkers and the people who needed to be seen showed up. I parked my truck between a Lexus and a Tesla, both with vanity plates. The building sat on the north shore of Lake Mercer, all glass and cedar. They'd renovated it 5 years ago with money from new members, tech people, Columbus transplants, the kind who wanted a lake house but also wanted valet parking. I'd been a member since '89, back when it was just a clapboard clubhouse and a dock for fishing boats. I went in through the side entrance. The bar was to the left, dining room to the right. Donna had texted me the table number. Corner booth, northwest side, view of the frozen lake. I hung back near the bar, ordered a coffee I didn't want. The bartender recognized me but didn't say anything. Small towns are good at selective blindness. Tyler's voice carried across the dining room before I saw him. That confident pitch he'd learned at college. The one that made everything sound like a done deal. He was in the corner booth with Rebecca, his wife. She had her phone out, angled for photos. Her Instagram had 42,000 followers. She documented everything. I couldn't hear the whole conversation over the ambient noise. Piano music, someone's loud laugh from the bar, but I heard enough. Atlas merger finalized by April 30th, Tyler was saying. Fiscal year end, clean break. Rebecca leaned in, her voice lower but still audible. How much is your end? $4 million. Consulting fee for facilitating the transition. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. And the old man can't block it? Rebecca again, checking her lipstick in her phone's camera. Tyler laughed. Walt, he's got no voting rights anymore. Legal confirmed it this morning. Constructive termination doctrine. The second he accepted that severance, he forfeited his shareholder status. He's just an ex-employee now. The bartender asked if I wanted a refill. I shook my head. Couldn't trust my voice. $4 million. A kickback from Atlas Commercial Supply, our biggest competitor. And Tyler thought I couldn't stop it because some lawyer had told him accepting severance meant I'd given up my ownership. I left cash on the bar and walked out. The cold air hit my face like a slap. My hands were shaking, not from cold. I sat in my truck with the engine running, heat blasting, pulled out my phone and searched constructive termination doctrine. The legal websites all said the same thing. If an employee accepts a severance package without contesting termination, they may forfeit certain rights, including claims of wrongful dismissal. But I wasn't an employee. I was a founding partner, a majority shareholder. The severance agreement sat in my coat pocket. I pulled it out and read it again under the dome light. There, page 3, paragraph 7. Acceptance of this agreement constitutes full and final settlement of all employment-related claims and terminates any and all employee rights and privileges. Employee rights, not shareholder rights. Tyler's lawyer had conflated the two, or Tyler had, or they were hoping I wouldn't know the difference. My phone rang. Donna. You heard? She asked. I heard. There's more. Her voice was tight. I'm at the office. Can you come? Now? Now. The warehouse was dark except for the security lights. Donna's car sat in the employee lot, exhaust puffing white in the cold. I parked next to her and went in through the loading dock entrance. She was waiting by her office, 3rd floor. I could get fired for this, she said, unlocking her door. Then don't. Too late. She went to her filing cabinet and pulled out a manila folder. I keep 2 sets of books, the official ones that go to the auditors, and the real ones. She spread papers across her desk. Bank statements, wire transfers. A contract with Atlas Commercial Supply, dated February 28th, 2 weeks ago. I scanned the contract. Merger terms. Asset valuation. And there, on page 12, consulting fee to TH Enterprises, LLC, $400,000, payable upon execution of preliminary agreement. TH Enterprises, I said. Tyler's shell company. Registered in December, right after the board made him CEO. Donna's jaw was tight. He's selling the company and pocketing $400,000 before the sale even closes. I sat down hard in her desk chair. The smell of her chamomile tea, she always had a cup going, mixed with the paper and toner smell of the office. The full merger pays him $4 million total? I asked. That's what I'm seeing. There are performance bonuses built in. If he delivers the company clean, no legal complications, no shareholder disputes, he gets the full amount. And he thinks I can't dispute it because I'm not a shareholder anymore. Donna poured herself fresh tea from her electric kettle. The water smelled faintly of mint. Are you a shareholder? Yes, the severance agreement only terminated my employee status. My equity stake is separate, based on the 78 incorporation and every stock transfer since. Can you prove it? I thought about the barn, the frozen ground, the safe I couldn't open. Not until March, I said. Maybe April. The merger vote is April 30th. We sat there in the fluorescent light. Outside, snow had started again, ticking against the windows. From somewhere in this building came the hum of the HVAC system, the distant beep of a forklift backing up. I can file an objection, I said. Invoke my right of first refusal under the 81 shareholder agreement. That should slow things down. Do you have a copy? It's in the safe, with everything else. So you'll be filing based on memory. Yes. Donna closed the folder. Tyler's lawyer will challenge it. They'll say it's not valid because it was never filed with the Delaware Secretary of State. They'll say even if it exists, you can't prove the terms without the original document. She was right. I knew she was right. File anyway, she said. Make them respond. Buy yourself time for the ground to thaw. I stood. My knees ached, the cold, the stress, 68 years of wear. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. She walked me to the door. Walt, be careful. Tyler's not smart, but Rebecca is, and she wants this money bad. I drove home through the snow. The severance agreement sat on the passenger seat. Employee rights terminated, but shareholder rights, those were still mine. If I could prove it, if I could reach the safe, if spring ever came, I filed the objection on Friday. Certified mail to every board member, copy to Tyler, copy to the company's general counsel. 3 pages citing the 1981 shareholder agreement, the right of first refusal clause, and my status as majority owner. I didn't have the original document, but I had 40 years of memory and a file cabinet full of quarterly statements that showed my equity stake growing year by year, 18%, 35%, 68%. The response came Tuesday morning. FedEx envelope, law firm letterhead. Tyler's attorney, some Columbus firm that specialized in corporate acquisitions. Dear Mr. Brennan, we represent Harding Industrial Supply Co. In response to your objection dated February 7th, 2025. After careful review, we must inform you that 1. No shareholder agreement dated 1981 exists in company records or Delaware state filings. 2. Your employment termination and acceptance of severance constitutes forfeiture of any claimed ownership interest. 3. Any further interference with pending corporate transactions may result in legal action for tortious interference. We strongly advise you to seek independent counsel. I read it twice. Then I called my lawyer, Bill Hendricks, local guy who'd handled my will and my father's estate. He read it over the phone while I waited. They're bluffing on point 2, he said. Employment and ownership are separate, but point 1 is a problem. If you don't have the original agreement and it's not on file with the state, they can argue it never existed or was superseded by later amendments. It exists. It's in my barn. Can you get it? I looked out the kitchen window. Snow covered everything. The thermometer on the porch read 19 degrees. Not until the ground thaws. When's that? March. Maybe late February if we get warm rain. Bill was quiet for a moment. That's cutting it close. The merger vote is April 30th? That's what Donna says. Then we need to buy time. I'll file a response asserting your ownership rights and demanding access to corporate records. That'll force them to produce documentation, might slow things down. I thanked him and hung up. The house was too quiet. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with the legal letter in front of me. My phone buzzed. Text from Donna. 3 p.m. my office alone. Donna's office smelled like chamomile and paper. She had 2 cups of tea waiting when I arrived. The good china, not her usual mug. That meant she was nervous. I found something, she said, sliding a folder across her desk. Inside were bank statements. Atlas Commercial Supply to TH Enterprises, LLC, $400,000, wired January 15th, 2 weeks before Tyler fired me. He already took the money, I said. First installment. There are 2 more payments tied to milestones. Another $400 when the merger agreement is signed by the board. And the final $3.2 million at closing. I did the math. $4 million total, like I'd heard at the yacht club. This is a kickback. Technically, it's structured as a consulting fee, but yes. Donna poured tea with steady hands. There's something else. Page 12 of the merger contract. Atlas is assuming all pension liabilities as part of the deal. That's standard. Except they're valuing those liabilities at 60% of actual cost. The difference gets rolled into the purchase price, which Tyler negotiated lower to accommodate. I understood immediately. He's selling the pension fund short to make the deal more attractive to Atlas, and then pocketing consulting fees for doing it. The crew's pensions get cut, Atlas gets a bargain, Tyler gets $4 million. The tea was too hot. I set it down. Outside Donna's window, the warehouse floor was busy, forklifts moving pallets, crew loading trucks for tomorrow's deliveries. Frank was down there somewhere, 30 years on the job. His pension was supposed to be solid. "Can you make copies of this?" I asked. "Already did." She pulled a second folder from her drawer. "But Walt, this doesn't solve your ownership problem. Tyler's lawyer is right. Without the original 81 agreement, you can't prove you have veto power over the merger. I have the incorporation papers from '78. Those prove I'm a founding partner. Do you, or are they in the safe too?" I didn't answer. She knew. "How long until you can access the barn safe?" she asked. 6 weeks minimum, maybe 8. That's late March, early April. The board vote is April 30th. You'll have maybe 2 weeks to file objections, get everything certified, convince the board to delay. She shook her head. "It's tight, Walt." "Then I'll make it work." Donna studied me over her teacup. Steam rose between us. "You're not doing this alone, are you? You've got someone else helping." "Not yet." Marcus Webb?" I nodded. Marcus knew where all the bodies were buried. Retired CFO, 40 years with the company. If anyone had kept copies of the original documents, it would be him. "He still fish Lake Mercer on Tuesdays?" Donna asked. "When the ice is off." "Ice won't be off until March, at the earliest." She stood, walked to her window. "Tyler's moving fast, Walt. He wants this done before anyone can organize opposition, before James Sr. has another lucid moment and realizes what's happening." "How is James?" "Bad days and worse days. I visited Sunday. He didn't recognize his own nephew's name." Her voice softened. "But he knew yours. Asked if you were still taking care of things." That hurt more than Tyler's termination letter. I stood to leave. Donna pressed the folder into my hands. "This is insurance. If Tyler tries to force the vote early, if he tries to claim you're just being obstructionist, show them the kickback. Show them he's selling pensions for personal profit." "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything." She walked me to the door. "And Walt, Tyler's not the dangerous one. Rebecca is. She's already posting about modernizing legacy businesses and disrupting old guard thinking. She's building a narrative where you're the villain." The hallway was empty. I could hear the warehouse floor below, metal on metal, engines running, the rhythm of work, the smell of diesel and cardboard and grease. "Let her build it," I said. "Narratives don't beat receipts." I drove home as the sun set. The folder sat on the passenger seat. $400,000. Pension fund. Manipulation. Everything I needed to destroy Tyler's credibility. Everything except the proof that I had the legal right to stop him. That was still under 8 inches of frozen ground. The emergency board call came Thursday morning. I was in the barn trying to oil the tractor. It hadn't started in 3 weeks when my phone rang. Harold Weinstein, board chair, retired judge, 73 years old, voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "Walt, we need to talk. Conference call in 30 minutes. What's this about?" "Tyler's attorney filed a motion to declare the 81 shareholder agreement void. Says it was never properly executed, never filed with Delaware, and can't be enforced without the original document." He paused. "Do you have the original?" I looked at the workshop floor, the tool chest, the boards underneath. "It's inaccessible right now." "That's what I was afraid of. Tyler knows that, doesn't he?" "Probably." Then he's forcing our hand. 30 minutes, Walt. Be ready." The call connected at 10. Harold, 3 other board members, Tyler's attorney on speaker. My own lawyer, Bill Hendricks, called in from his office. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad. In the folder Donna had given me, Tyler's lawyer spoke first. Young voice, practice confidence. "Gentlemen, we're here to resolve Mr. Brennan's objection to the Atlas merger. My client has been patient, but we need clarity. Mr. Brennan claims ownership rights based on an agreement no one has seen, and that doesn't exist in any corporate records or state filings." "The agreement exists," I said. "Signed 1981. Witnessed by Marcus Webb, then CFO, filed in the company's safe." "Which safe would that be, Mr. Brennan?" "My personal records. So not in company possession, not accessible to the board, not verifiable." The lawyer's voice had an edge now. "Brennan, without the original document, you have no proof of these alleged ownership rights. Your own attorney will confirm that verbal claims don't supersede written corporate records." Bill cleared his throat. "That's not entirely accurate. Mr. Brennan's equity stake has been reflected in quarterly statements for 40 years. That creates a rebuttable presumption of ownership. Presumption isn't proof, and those quarterly statements show employee stock options, not founding partner equity. Two very different things, Harold cut in. Walt, can you produce the original agreement by March 15th? That gives you 3 weeks. I looked out the window. Snow still covered the fields. The long-range forecast showed temperatures in the 20s through the end of February. The ground's frozen. I can't access the safe until it thaws. So that's a no. It's a not yet. Tyler's lawyer jumped on it. Your Honor, Mr. Weinstein, this is exactly the problem. Mr. Brennan is stalling corporate progress based on documents he can't produce and rights he can't prove. Meanwhile, the Atlas merger offers significant value to actual shareholders and protects employee jobs through the transition. Protects jobs, I said. Is that what you call cutting pension liabilities to 60%? Silence on the line. What's he talking about? Harold asked. I opened Donna's folder. The merger agreement values pension obligations at 60% of their actual cost. Atlas gets a bargain. Tyler gets his consulting fees. The crew gets reduced pensions. Tyler's lawyer recovered fast. Pension restructuring is a standard component of modern M&A transactions. The deal protects jobs, Mr. Brennan. That's more than your obstructionism does. My obstructionism is based on legal ownership rights that supersede any merger proposal. Then prove it. Show us the agreement. March 15th, you'll have it. We can't wait that long. The board needs to vote by month end to meet Atlas's timeline. Harold's voice cut through. The vote stays at April 30th. That was the agreed schedule and it stands. Walt, you have until March 15th to produce documentation. If you can't, we'll proceed with the merger vote based on existing corporate records. Understood. The call ended. I sat there with my cold coffee and the legal pad where I'd been tracking arguments. Outside, a cardinal landed on the porch railing, bright red against the snow. It looked at me through the window, then flew off. March 15th, 4 weeks away. The ground would barely be thawed by then, maybe not at all if the cold held. My phone buzzed. Not a call, a notification. Instagram. I didn't use Instagram, but Donna had told me to set up alerts for Rebecca's account. The post was already live. Photo of Tyler in the executive office, standing by the window with his arms crossed. Professional lighting. The caption. When you're trying to move a legacy company into the 21st century, but old guard leadership won't let go. Some people think experience means holding everyone else back. Real leadership means making hard choices for the future. Business transformation. Watch new generation, legacy companies, 2,000 likes in 20 minutes. The comments were worse. My dad's like this. Boomers don't know when to retire. Respect your elders, but also respect progress. If you can't produce documents, maybe they don't exist? I set the phone down. My hands were shaking. The local news picked it up by afternoon. Generational dispute at local industrial supply company. And they didn't name me, but everyone in town would know. Small-town newspapers don't need names when everyone recognizes the story. I went back to the barn. The tractor still wouldn't start. I checked the battery. Dead. Tried to jump it from the truck. Nothing. The engine was flooded, or the fuel line was frozen, or both. 40 years I'd kept that tractor running. My father's tractor before that. Now it sat there like a rusted monument to obsolescence. I tried the shovel again, drove it into the ground by the workshop floor. Same result, frozen solid. The blade rang against the earth, didn't even leave a mark. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from people I hadn't talked to in years, some supportive, some asking if the rumors were true, some just wanted gossip. I turned it off. The barn was quiet except for wind through the gaps in the siding. The smell of old motor oil and cold metal. I sat on my father's workbench and looked at the floor where the safe was buried. Right there, 8 inches down. Everything I needed to prove Tyler wrong, stop the merger, save the pensions. Locked under frozen ground I couldn't touch. The cardinal came back, perched in the barn door. It tilted its head, watching me. Then it flew away into the gray afternoon. I sat there until the light faded, until the cold drove me back to the house. For the first time in 40 years, I thought about quitting. Saturday morning, someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting company. Frank stood on the porch, work coat on, boots caked with road salt. The foreman who'd looked away when they boxed up my desk, he held his cap in his hands. Got a minute? He asked. I poured us coffee. We sat at the kitchen table. Frank wrapped both hands around his mug like he was trying to warm them. The kitchen smelled like the pot roast I'd made last night. Easier to cook once and eat for 3 days. I should have said something, Frank said. When Tyler fired you, should have told him it was wrong. You've got a family. Mortgage. I understand. Still should have said it. He drank his coffee. I came to tell you something. Tyler doesn't know how to run the floor. He's cutting corners on the Atlas trial shipment, skipping safety checks, pushing the crew to load faster than the equipment can handle. How far behind are you? 3 weeks? Maybe 4. Atlas wanted their trial delivery by March 1st. We won't make it until the 20th. Minimum. Which Frank set his mug down. And that's if nothing breaks. Jimmy nearly lost a finger yesterday because Tyler won't authorize maintenance on the forklifts. I got up and found my notepad. Tell me everything. Every shortcut, every safety violation, every missed deadline. Frank talked for 20 minutes. I took notes, deferred maintenance, ignored inspection schedules, crew working mandatory overtime without proper rest breaks, equipment failures that should have been reported to OSHA but weren't. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because 30 years ago, you hired me when nobody else would. I'd been laid off from the cement plant. Had a kid on the way. You took a chance on me. Frank stood. And because if Tyler sells this company to Atlas, they're going to gut it. Half the crew will be laid off in the first 6 months. That's what they do. You think I can stop it? I think you're the only one who ever gave a damn about the people doing the work. Tyler cares about his payout. Rebecca cares about her Instagram. He pulled on his cap. I just wanted you to know what's happening. What you do with it is up to you. After Frank left, I sat with my notes. 3 weeks behind schedule. Safety violations. Equipment failures. It wasn't enough to stop the merger, but it was enough to show Tyler's incompetence. Show the board what they were getting with their new CEO. I added it to Donna's folder. The kickback payments, the pension restructuring, and now this, evidence that Tyler couldn't even manage basic operations without running the company into the ground. My phone rang. Marcus Webb. You busy Tuesday? He asked. Depends. Lake Mercer, dawn. Bring coffee. Ice is still on the lake, Marcus. Some of it, not all of it. North Shore's been clear for a week. Good crappie fishing. He paused. I got something you need to see. Been keeping it safe since '78. My pulse picked up. What is it? Not over the phone. Tuesday dawn. You know the spot. He hung up before I could ask more. I stood at the kitchen window. The fields were still frozen, but the forecast showed a warming trend. High 30s next week. Maybe low 40s. Not enough to thaw 8 inches of ground, but enough to start the process. March was 2 weeks away. The ground would be soft by mid-month. I could access the safe by the 15th, maybe sooner if the weather held. But Marcus had something. Something from '78. Something he'd kept for 47 years. The incorporation papers. Had to be. I went back to the barn. The tractor still wouldn't start, but I didn't need it. I needed to think. I sat on my father's workbench and looked at the shop floor. The safe was down there. The 81 shareholder agreement. Every stock certificate. Every equity transfer. But Marcus might have the original incorporation documents. The ones that proved I wasn't just some employee. James Sr. had given stock options to. I was there from the beginning. A founding partner. If Marcus still had those papers, I wouldn't need to wait for the ground to thaw. I could file them with the board, establish my standing, force a delay on the merger vote. My phone buzzed. Text from Donna. Tyler's pushing for early vote. Board meeting Monday. Be ready. I called Harold Weinstein. What's this about an early vote? I asked. Tyler's attorney is arguing that the April 30th date gives you too much time to manufacture evidence. They want the vote moved up to March 31st. That's 3 weeks before the agreed date. I know. I'm opposing it, but I've only got 3 votes. Linda Chen is leaning toward Tyler's side. She wants the merger done fast so her fund can exit. If Dr. Foster flips, Tyler gets his early vote. Can you hold them off until Tuesday? Why Tuesday? I'll have new evidence. Documentation that changes the equation. Harold was quiet. I could hear him breathing, thinking it through. I can delay the vote until Wednesday. That's the best I can do. If you don't have solid documentation by then, I can't help you. Wednesday's fine. I hung up and looked at the calendar. Today was Saturday the 22nd. Marcus was meeting me Tuesday the 25th, board vote Wednesday the 26th. 3 days to either save the company or lose everything. I spent Sunday organizing my files. Every quarterly statement, every board meeting minute, every email exchange where James Sr. and I discussed company strategy. It wasn't proof of ownership. Bill had been clear about that, but it was proof of involvement. Proof that I'd been treated as a partner, not an employee, for 40 years. The house was too quiet. I turned on the radio. Local station was playing Old Country, Merle Haggard, Mama Tried. My father used to play that on the shop radio while he worked. I thought about calling James Sr. at Pinecrest. But Donna had said he was having more bad days than good. No point in upsetting him with news he wouldn't remember. Outside, the temperature had climbed to 36. The snow was starting to melt in patches. Water dripped from the barn roof. The fields showed dark spots where the ground was visible. Not enough to thaw 8 inches down, but enough to feel like spring was possible. I made dinner, the last of the pot roast, some carrots, bread. Ate alone at the kitchen table, with the radio still playing. The DJ came on between songs. Warming trend continues through the week, folks. 40s by Wednesday, maybe even 50s by the weekend. Spring's coming early this year. I looked out the window. The barn stood dark against the sunset. Somewhere, under that floor, under the frozen earth, 40 years of proof sat waiting. But Tuesday morning, Marcus was going to hand me something that might make waiting unnecessary. I cleaned up dinner, washed the dishes, sat on the porch for a while even though it was cold. The stars were out, clear sky, no clouds. The kind of night where you could see your breath and the Milky Way both. My father used to say you could tell a lot about a man by what he kept safe, what he held on to when everyone else was throwing things away. Marcus had held on to something for 47 years. Tuesday, I'd find out what. Monday, the ground started to soften. I went to the barn at first light and tried the shovel again. This time it bit, not deep, maybe 2 inches, but it moved earth instead of ringing against ice. Progress. I dug for 20 minutes before my back gave out. Got down 4 inches. Still not enough to reach the safe's top latch, but close. The earth smelled like thaw, wet and dark and full of promise. By noon, I'd made it to 6 inches. I could see the safe's combination dial. My hands were raw from the shovel handle. I went inside, wrapped them, came back out. One more session and I'd have it. But my phone rang. Bill Hendricks. Tyler filed an emergency motion, he said. Wants the board to declare you in breach of fiduciary duty for delaying the merger. He's asking them to strip your voting rights, entirely pending resolution. Can he do that? Not legally. But he can tie it up in motions until the ground freezes again next winter. Walt, you need those incorporation papers. When's Marcus getting them to you? Tomorrow morning. Make sure he does. Because if Tyler gets that emergency hearing scheduled, we're going to need proof in hand, not promises. I hung up and went back to the barn, dug until dark, got down 7 inches, close enough to touch the safe's handle, but the latch mechanism was still buried. I'd need another inch, maybe 2, to actually open it. The temperature dropped after sunset, refreezing. I covered the hole with a tarp and weighted it down with cinder blocks. Tomorrow. Marcus would have the papers tomorrow. I met him at Lake Mercer before sunrise. The North Shore boat launch, same place we'd been fishing for 30 years. His truck was already there when I pulled in. He had his aluminum boat in the water, motor tilted up. The lake was half frozen, ice along the south shore, open water to the north. Climb in, he said. I stepped into the boat. It rocked under my weight. Marcus pushed off from the dock and lowered the motor. The engine caught on the second pull. Small outboard, 2-stroke. Smell of gas and oil mixing with the cold morning air. We motored out maybe 200 yards, far enough that our voices wouldn't carry to shore. The sun was just starting to pink the horizon. Mist rose off the open water. Marcus cut the engine. We drifted. How's your back? He asked. Complaining. How's your heart? Same. He opened his tackle box, moved aside plastic containers of night crawlers and spinner baits. Underneath was a Ziploc freezer bag, yellowed with age. He handed it to me. Inside were papers. Typed on an actual typewriter, you could see the uneven letter strikes. Dated March 15th, 1908. Certificate of Incorporation, Harding Industrial Supply Company, State of Delaware. I read the names. James Harding Sr., President. Walter Brennan, Vice President of Operations, Founding Partners. Equal equity stake, 25% each. The remaining 50% divided among 3 initial investors who'd all sold out by 1985. You kept this, I said. 47 years. James asked me to witness his signature. We were in his kitchen. His wife made coffee. He looked at me and said, Mark, if anything ever happens, if my family ever tries to push Walt out, you make sure he's got proof. Marcus adjusted his fishing rod, though he hadn't baited the hook. I put these in a Ziploc bag that night. Been in my tackle box ever since. Figured they'd be safer there than in some file cabinet at the office. My hands were shaking holding the papers. Tyler's lawyer says I was just an employee who got stock options. Tyler's lawyer is full of shit, as Marcus pulled out a second document from the tackle box. This is from 81. Amendment to the incorporation, adding the right of first refusal clause. James and I both signed as witnesses. It references the original incorporation and explicitly confirms your founding partner status. Well, it was all there. Everything I'd buried in the barn safe, Marcus had kept in a tackle box between fishing lures and bobbers. Why didn't you tell me you had these? I asked. Didn't know you'd need them. Thought everything was fine until Donna called me last week. Said Tyler was trying to void your ownership claim. He reeled in his empty line. Seemed like a good time to go fishing. The sun was up now, warm on my face despite the cold air. I could see the barn from here, small against the tree line across the lake. The safe was under that floor, still not fully accessible, but I didn't need it anymore. Board meets tomorrow, I said. Tyler's pushing for an early merger vote. Then you better show them these. Marcus started the motor. And Walt, when this is over, when you've got the company secured, make James proud. Run it right. None of this slash and burn merger bullshit. Build something that lasts. We motored back to shore. I helped him load the boat onto his trailer. The Ziploc bag sat in my truck's front seat. 47 years of protection. In a freezer bag that probably cost 99 cents. Marcus, I said, why'd you really keep these all this time? He secured the last tie-down on his boat. Because James was my friend. And friends protect each other's legacy, even after they're gone. He climbed into his truck. Especially after they're gone. I drove home with the incorporation papers on the seat beside me. Made 3 copies at the library. 1 for Bill, 1 for Harold, 1 for my own files. Put the originals in my safe deposit box at the bank. That afternoon, I took the copies to Bill's office. He read them twice. This is it, he said. Founding partner status. Right of first refusal clause. Both properly executed and witnessed. Tyler's argument falls apart. Can we file before tomorrow's board meeting? We can file right now. He drafted a response to Tyler's emergency motion, attached the incorporation documents, cited Delaware corporate law, hand-delivered it to Harold's office by 4 p.m. Harold called me at 6. You had these the whole time? He asked. Marcus did. Tyler's going to lose his mind. Good. Board meeting is still scheduled for tomorrow at 10. Be there, Walt, and bring Marcus. I want him to testify that these documents are authentic. I called Marcus. He said he'd be there. Then I drove back to the barn. The hole I'd dug was still there under the tarp. 7 inches deep. Close enough to touch the safe handle but not open it. I didn't need to anymore. But I finished the job anyway. Dug the last 2 inches by lantern light. Opened the safe. Everything was there. Stock certificates, transfer documents, the 81 amendment I'd signed and filed. Same documents Marcus had kept in his tackle box. I sat on the barn floor and laughed. 40 years of building redundancy and protection. And it came down to a fishing buddy who'd kept a promise nobody else remembered. The ground had thawed. Spring was coming, and tomorrow I was taking my company back. Tyler called at 7 that night. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. We need to talk, he said. No greeting, no pretense. Can I come by? I'm not going anywhere. He showed up 20 minutes later, alone, no Rebecca, no lawyer. He parked his BMW next to my truck and sat there for a minute before getting out. I watched from the kitchen window. When he knocked, I let him in, didn't offer coffee. We stood in the kitchen. He looked around. At the old linoleum, the appliances from the 90s. My father's work coat still hanging by the door even though he'd been dead 15 years. Harold showed me the incorporation papers, Tyler said. The ones Marcus had. And my lawyer says they're legitimate. Says you have every right to block the merger. He pulled out a chair without asking and sat down. So here's my offer. $1.2 million. Cash. You sign over your voting rights, walk away clean, and we all move on. I leaned against the counter. That's generous. It's fair. You've put in your time. You deserve to retire comfortably. Retire, I said. That's what this is about. You think I'm too old to understand what you're doing. I think you're stuck in the past. The company needs to evolve. Atlas has the capital, the technology, the market reach we need to compete, and you need the $4 million. His face went carefully neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. TH Enterprises, the consulting fees. $400,000 already paid, another $4 million at closing. I pulled out Donna's folder and set it on the table between us. You're not modernizing the company, Tyler. You're selling it for parts and pocketing a kickback. He stared at the folder but didn't touch it. That's a standard facilitation fee. Perfectly legal. Maybe. But cutting pension liabilities to 60% of value? Skipping safety inspections to meet Atlas's trial deadline? That's not legal. That's not even competent. The crew's pensions are guaranteed under the merger. Their jobs are safe. At 60% value, which means a 30-year employee like Frank loses 40% of his retirement. I opened the folder, showed him the pension restructuring terms. You're stealing from people who built this company so you can buy yourself a bigger boat. Tyler stood up. You're making this personal. It's business. It's always been personal. James and I started this company in a Quonset hut with 3 folding tables and a dream. We didn't build it so his nephew could liquidate it for champagne money. Uncle James has dementia. He doesn't even know what year it is. He knew enough to tell Donna to help me. He knew enough to make Marcus keep those incorporation papers safe. I closed the folder. James built this company to last. You're trying to sell it before the foundation settles. Tyler's jaw tightened. $1.2 million, Walt. That's my final offer. Take it and go enjoy your retirement. Or fight me and spend the next year in court watching legal fees eat whatever you think you're protecting. And I looked at him, really looked at him. He was 32. Handsome kid, good education, probably could have made something of himself if he'd worked for it instead of expecting it to be handed to him. Get out, I said. Think about it. You've got until tomorrow's board meeting. I've thought about it. The answer is no. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. Rebecca was right. You're just a stubborn old man who can't admit the world moved on without him. Maybe. But I'm a stubborn old man who owns 68% of your company, and you need my signature to sell it. He left without another word. I watched his taillights disappear down the county road. The house was quiet again. I sat at the kitchen table with the buyout offer in my head. $1.2 million. More money than I'd ever had at one time. Enough to retire, travel, do whatever I wanted with whatever time I had left. All I had to do was sign over my voting rights. Let Tyler sell the company, let Atlas gut the pensions and lay off half the crew and turn 47 years of work into a line item on a quarterly earnings report. I got up and walked to the barn. The safe was still open. I pulled out a photo I kept there, the ribbon-cutting ceremony, in '78. James and me, with oversized scissors, cutting a red ribbon in front of our first real building. We were young, confident, believed we were building something that would outlast us. My father had come to that ceremony. Stood in the back with his work coat on, proud but not saying much. He died 6 years later. Lung cancer from 40 years of welding fumes and cigarette smoke. But he'd seen it, seen what James and I built, seen that his son had made something that mattered. I put the photo back and locked the safe, covered the hole with the floorboards, slid the tool chest back into place. Tomorrow I'd go to that board meeting. I'd present the incorporation papers. I'd block Tyler's merger. And then I'd have to figure out how to actually run a company again, instead of just protecting it. But tonight, I sat on the porch and watched the stars come out. The temperature was in the 40s. The fields were thawing. I could smell wet earth and the first hints of grass starting to green. Rebecca's Instagram post was still up, 2,000 likes. Comments calling me a dinosaur, a relic, an old man who didn't know when to quit. Maybe they were right. But dinosaurs didn't go extinct because they were old. They went extinct because the world changed too fast, and they couldn't adapt. I'd been adapting for 68 years. I'd adapt one more time. Spring was coming. The ground had thawed, and I wasn't done yet. The board met at 10 in the conference room on the 3rd floor. Same room where James and I had signed the original partnership agreement 47 years ago. Same oak table, refinished twice but still the same wood. I arrived early. Marcus came with me. We sat in the lobby drinking coffee from the machine that had been there since the 90s. Tasted like burned plastic, but it was hot. Harold showed up at 9:45. Nodded to us but didn't say much. Tyler arrived at 9:50 with his lawyer and Rebecca. She had her phone out, filming. Documenting history, she said to nobody in particular. We went in. 6 board members, Harold, Stan Kowalski from the union, Linda Chen from the venture fund, Dr. Raymond Foster, who'd invested early, and 2 others who rarely spoke. Tyler sat at the head of the table like he already owned it. His lawyer set up a laptop. Harold called the meeting to order. We're here to address Mr. Harding's motion for an early merger vote and Mr. Brennan's counterfiling asserting ownership rights. Walt, you want to start? I stood, pulled the incorporation papers from my folder, handed copies to each board member. March 15, 1978. Certificate of Incorporation for Harding Industrial Supply Company, James Harding Sr. And Walter Brennan, founding partners, 25% equity each. I let them read. These documents establish that I'm not an employee who received stock options. I'm a founding partner with full voting rights under Delaware corporate law. Tyler's lawyer cleared his throat. These documents don't supersede the termination agreement Mr. Brennan signed. Employment and ownership are separate issues. Exactly, I said, which is why terminating my employment doesn't affect my ownership stake. But it does affect your fiduciary standing. You're no longer involved in day-to-day operations. You have no current knowledge of company needs or market conditions. Your objection to the merger is based on personal grievance, not business judgment. I pulled out the second folder, Frank's notes. Let's talk about business judgment. Tyler's management has put the company 3 weeks behind on the Atlas trial delivery. He's deferred critical maintenance on equipment, skipped OSHA-required safety inspections. One employee nearly lost a finger last week because Tyler won't authorize forklift repairs. I slid the documentation across the table. That's not modernization, that's incompetence. Linda Chin spoke up. These are operational issues. They don't invalidate the strategic value of the merger. They do when the merger is built on fraud. I opened the third folder, Donna's evidence. Atlas Commercial Supply paid Tyler's shell company, TH Enterprises LLC, $400,000 in January, before the merger was even proposed to this board. The contract promises him another $3.6 million at closing. The room went quiet. That's a consulting fee, Tyler said. His voice was tight. Perfectly legal compensation for facilitating the transaction. Is it legal to restructure employee pensions at 60% of their actual value? So Atlas gets a better deal and you get a bigger payout? I showed them the pension terms. Frank Morrison has worked here 30 years. Under this merger, he loses 40% of his retirement. Same for every employee with over 20 years tenure. Stan Kowalski, the union rep, grabbed the pension documentation. Read it twice. His face went red. You told me pensions were protected. They are, Tyler said. The pensions are guaranteed. The restructuring is just 40%, Stan said. 40% less than what these people earned. That's protected? Dr. Foster leaned back in his chair. Tyler, did you disclose the consulting fee arrangement to the board before we authorized merger negotiations? It's standard practice in M&A transactions. That's not what I asked. Tyler looked at his lawyer. The lawyer looked at his laptop. Neither answered. Harold tapped his pen on the table. I'm going to call a vote. All in favor of proceeding with the Atlas merger, as currently structured, raise your hand. Linda Chen's hand went up. One of the quiet board members followed. That was it. Opposed? Harold, Stan, Dr. Foster, and the other quiet member. 4-2. The merger was dead. Tyler stood up. This is bullshit. You're letting personal loyalty override sound business strategy. Sit down, Harold said. We're not done. Tyler sat. Harold looked at me. Walt, you've blocked the merger. What's your plan for the company going forward? Same as it's always been. Run it right. Pay our people fair. Build something that lasts. You're 68 years old. You want to be CEO again? No, I want to be chairman. Provide oversight. Make sure we don't make stupid decisions like selling out to competitors who'll gut us for parts. When I looked at Tyler. And I want new executive leadership. Someone who understands that consulting fees and Instagram posts don't build companies. Work does. My phone buzzed. I ignored it, but it buzzed again and again. Harold frowned. You need to take that? I looked. 3 missed calls from Pinecrest Assisted Living, a voicemail. I stepped into the hall and listened. Nurse's voice. Mr. Brennan, this is Karen at Pinecrest. James is having a lucid episode. He's asking for you. He says it's important. I went back into the conference room. I need to leave. James is awake. Actually awake. Harold nodded. We'll recess. Reconvene in 2 hours. I drove to Pinecrest with Marcus. The assisted living facility smelled like antiseptic and instant coffee. We found James in his room, sitting up in bed. His eyes were clear. He knew me. Walt, he said. His voice was thin, but steady. Did you stop him? Did you stop Tyler? The merger's blocked. Company's safe. He closed his eyes. Good. That's good. He opened them again, looked at Marcus. You kept the papers, like I asked. 47 years in my tackle box, Marcus said. James almost smiled. I told Donna, back when Tyler first started, I told her, if he ever tries something, you help Walt. You make sure Walt has what he needs. He grabbed my hand. His grip was weak. I knew. Even then, I knew what he was. No, why didn't you stop him? I asked. He's family. I kept thinking he'd grow into it. That responsibility would change him. James's eyes were wet. I was wrong. I'm sorry, Walt. I should have protected what we built. You did protect it. You kept the papers. You warned Donna. Too late. Should have done it sooner. A nurse came in. He needs to rest now. James held my hand tighter. You run it right, Walt. You hear me? None of this merger nonsense. Build something that lasts. I will. Promise me. I promise. His grip loosened. His eyes closed. The nurse checked his vitals and nodded. He was just sleeping, not gone. Marcus and I walked back to the parking lot. The sun was warm, 50s maybe. The snow was almost gone. Crocuses were pushing up through the mud by the entrance. He knew, Marcus said. All along, he knew Tyler would try this. And he planned for it, made sure we had what we needed. We drove back to the warehouse. The board was reconvening. Tyler was gone. His car wasn't in the lot. Rebecca's Instagram had been deleted. The post about old guard obstruction, the photos of Tyler in the executive office, all of it vanished. Harold was waiting in the conference room. Tyler resigned, effective immediately, took a severance package and signed an NDA. What about Rebecca? Gone with him. They're both gone. I sat down at the table. The incorporation papers were still there. My father's face looked out from the ribbon-cutting photo, proud and quiet. So what now? Linda Chen asked. Now we run the company, I said, like the right way. Tyler's resignation letter came through that afternoon. 2 paragraphs. No apology. Just a formal notice of departure and a request that the severance be processed quickly. Harold handled the paperwork. The board voted to accept the resignation 6-0. Linda Chen abstained. She was already planning her fund's exit strategy, looking for a buyer for her minority stake. I told her I'd buy her out at fair market value. She agreed. By the end of the week, I owned 73%. Rebecca's Instagram never came back online. Someone said they'd moved to Charlotte. Someone else said Denver. I didn't care enough to find out. The crew threw a quiet celebration on the loading dock. Nothing fancy, just coffee and donuts on a Friday morning. Frank shook my hand. Didn't say much, but he didn't need to. The younger guys took selfies with me, posted them with captions like "Real Boss is back" and "Old School wins." I made them delete those. Didn't need the attention. Atlas sent a formal withdrawal of their merger proposal. Professional language. No hard feelings. Best wishes for the future. Translation: they'd found easier prey. I promoted Frank to operations manager. Gave him Tyler's old office. He said he'd rather stay on the floor, but I told him we needed someone who understood the work to make the decisions. He accepted. Donna got a raise and a new title, Chief Financial Officer. She'd earned it 10 times over. Marcus came out of retirement as a consultant. Advisor to the chairman, we called it. Mostly it meant he and I had lunch twice a week and talked about the old days and the new ones. The company kept running. We fixed the deferred maintenance, brought in OSHA for a full inspection, passed with minor notes. Got the Atlas trial shipment delivered, 3 weeks late but within acceptable tolerances. They didn't reorder, but we didn't need them to. Spring came in earnest by mid-April. The fields around my farm turned green. I planted the garden my father used to keep. Tomatoes, beans, peppers. Probably wouldn't eat half of it, but it felt right to have something growing. The barn tractor started on the first try. I changed the oil, replaced the battery, got it running smooth. Spent a Saturday afternoon just driving it around the property, turning soil, listening to the engine. The safe stayed under the barn floor. I'd refilled the hole and put the boards back, but I knew exactly where it was. Sometimes knowing is enough. 3 weeks after the board vote, I visited James at Pinecrest. He was having a bad day, didn't recognize me, kept asking for his wife, who'd been dead 12 years. The nurse said that's how it went, lucid moments scattered between long stretches of fog. I sat with him anyway, told him about the company, about Frank's promotion and Donna's new role, and how we'd held the line against Atlas. I didn't know if he heard me, but I said it out loud because some things need to be spoken, even if nobody's listening. When I got up to leave, James grabbed my wrist. His eyes cleared for just a second. "You saved it," he said. "We saved it, you and me and Marcus and Donna." "Good." His grip loosened. "That's good." The fog came back. He looked past me, confused, searching for someone who wasn't there. I drove home through afternoon sunlight. The radio played old country. The trees were budding. Robins worked the ditches looking for worms. At home, I made coffee and sat on the porch. The fields stretched green toward the horizon. Wade Kimball was out planting corn in the leased acreage. His tractor moved in straight lines, methodical, patient. I opened my father's old field notebook, the one he'd kept for 50 years of farming, added an entry. Date, weather, notes on the garden, continuing the record. The leather ledger from the barn sat on the table next to me. I'd brought it up to the house. Opened it to a clean page and wrote, May 4th, 2025. Company secured. Tyler gone. Board vote 6-0. Marcus kept the papers safe. Donna kept the books honest. Frank kept the crew loyal. James had one more lucid moment. Said we did good. Ground thawed March 15th. Safe accessible March 18th. Didn't need it by then. Marcus had everything in his tackle box. Spring came early this year. Apple blossoms are out. Tractor runs smooth. Garden planted. 47 years. That's how long it takes to build something that lasts. I closed the ledger. The sun was warm on the porch boards. A barn swallow landed on the railing, looked at me with black eyes, then flew off toward the barn. From inside the house, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Probably Donna, with some question about next quarter's budget, or Frank needing approval on a new hire. It could wait. The tractor parts I'd been meaning to oil sat on the workbench in the barn. I walked out there in the late afternoon light. The barn smelled like it always had. Motor oil, old wood, thyme. I oiled the parts. John Deere green, worn smooth from use. Each piece fit exactly where it belonged. Nothing fancy. Just honest tools doing honest work. The floor where the safe was buried looked the same as the rest. You'd never know anything was there unless you knew where to look. That's how the best protection works. Invisible until you need it. I thought about Tyler's offer. $1.2 million. Comfortable retirement. No more board meetings, or budget reviews, or personnel decisions. But comfortable isn't the same as right. And retirement isn't the same as quitting. My father worked until the day he died. Not because he had to. Because the work mattered. Because building something and maintaining it and passing it on, that's what makes the time you spent worth something. I locked the barn and walked back to the house. The evening was warm. Crickets were starting up in the grass. The first fireflies blinked near the tree line. Inside, I listened to the voicemail. Donna. Walt, we got the new contracts from Midwestern Supply. They want to talk partnership terms. Call me when you can." I called her back. We talked for 20 minutes about contract terms and delivery schedules and whether we had the capacity to take on new accounts. Normal work, good work. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with the ledger open in front of me. Added one more line. They thought silence was surrender. Turned out it was just preparation. I closed the book, put it on the shelf next to my father's field notebooks. Someday someone else would read these, learn what we built and how we protected it and why it mattered. The land remembers who loved it and who tried to sell it. The company remembers too. And now, so would I. Outside, the last light faded from the fields. The barn stood dark against the sunset. Somewhere, under that floor, under boards that looked like all the others, 47 years of protection waited. Just in case, just like my father taught me, build it right. Keep it safe, pass it on, the rest is just noise. I still go to the barn most mornings, not because I have to, because the ritual matters. Oil the tractor parts, check the tools, make sure everything's where it belongs. The safe is still under the floor. I know exactly which boards, exactly how deep. Haven't opened it since March. Don't need to. But knowing it's there, knowing the protection is in place, that's enough. The ground remembers everything you bury in it. Remembers what you planted and what you tried to hide, and which one grew. May rolled into June. The garden came in strong. Tomatoes already setting fruit, beans climbing their poles, peppers, thick and green. More than I could eat, so I took boxes to the warehouse. The crew appreciated it. Fresh vegetables taste different when they come from dirt, you know. Marcus and I still fish Tuesdays when the weather holds. We don't talk much about the merger anymore. Mostly we talk about crappie and the best depth for base and whether the new lure he bought at the sporting goods store was worth the $12 he paid. Sometimes we don't talk at all, just sit in the boat and watch the water. Last week he pulled out his tackle box to change hooks. The Ziploc bag was gone. I'd taken the incorporation papers to the bank, but the space where it sat for 47 years was still there. An empty spot between the night crawlers and the spinner baits. Feels lighter, he said. That's because it is. No, I mean it feels right, like I was carrying something that doesn't need carrying anymore. He's right about that. The weight we carry isn't always in the pounds. Sometimes it's in the promises we keep and the things we protect and the watching we do while everyone else forgets. James passed in his sleep on a Thursday. The nurse said it was peaceful. Said he'd had a good afternoon, recognized a few people, ate his dinner, went to bed, just didn't wake up. We buried him next to his wife. Small service. The board came, some of the old crew. Marcus gave a eulogy that was mostly about the early days, the Quonset hut, the rotary phone, the dream of building something that would outlast them both. I didn't speak, didn't need to. James knew what we'd done, what we'd saved. After the service, I went back to the farm, sat on the porch with coffee, and watched the afternoon stretch long across the fields. The sun was warm. Apple blossoms were mostly gone, replaced by small green fruit that would ripen by August. A barn swallow built a nest in the workshop eaves. I watched her fly in and out, carrying mud and grass, building something that would shelter what came next. Patient work, repetitive work, the kind that doesn't make headlines but matters more than anything that does. The leather ledger sat on the table beside me. I opened it to a clean page, wrote the date, wrote the weather, 72 degrees, clear sky, light breeze from the south. Wrote, James Harding Sr., 1951-225, co-founder, friend, partner. We kept the promise, built something that lasts. 47 years since we signed those incorporation papers in his kitchen. 47 years of work and worry and protection and growth. Some people build empires. We built a company, a real one. The kind where people matter as much as profit, where a handshake still means something, where the work you do today sets the foundation for what comes tomorrow. The sun dropped below the tree line. The evening cooled. I could smell fresh-cut grass from Wade's field, and the faint diesel scent from the barn, and something green and growing that didn't have a name. Spring had come. The ground had thawed. And what we buried all those years ago, the promises, the protection, the proof, it all rose up exactly when we needed it. Not because we were loud, not because we fought, but because we'd done the work, kept the records, protected what mattered. I closed the ledger. The barn swallow swooped past the porch, heading back to her nest with another beakful of mud. Building something, one small piece at a time, that's all any of us can do. But if you do it right, if you do it with patience and care, and the understanding that what you build today might save someone 40 years from now, that's enough. That's everything. The fields stretched green in the last light. The barn stood solid. The safe stayed buried right where it belonged. And I sat there until the stars came out, grateful for the ground that remembered, in the spring that came, and the work that never really ends, just changes hands.